Good morning. During the month of May, many people will commemorate the birthday of Malcolm X. In the years since his life was ended by an assassin's bullets, his image has become even more powerful than it was when he was alive. In honor of Malcolm's birthday this morning, we bring you an encore presentation of our Emmy Award-winning program, an interview with the person who knew him best, his eldest daughter, Attalah Shabazz, who was there when he was killed.
When a criminal starts misusing me, I am going to use whatever is necessary to get that criminal off my back.
You can't do anything by legislation. It takes education. The white man in this country needs to be re-educated so that his behavior pattern toward non-whites will change.
Think about it. Think about it.
And the black man in this country also needs to be re-educated so our behavior pattern and attitude toward ourselves will change.
It's raining revolution.
Malcolm X, a Muslim, a martyr, a man once willing to right a wrong by any means necessary. He later altered his views on how to achieve racial equality. Today on Bay Sunday, get to know Malcolm X through the eyes of his oldest daughter, Ms. Attalah Shabazz.
It's raining revolution. It's raining revolution.
Good morning. Welcome to Bay Sunday. I'm Barbara Rogers. This morning we're on location with a very special guest, Ms. Attalah Shabazz, the daughter of Malcolm X. What was it like growing up as the daughter of Malcolm X, with everything that went with that, in terms of what people thought about him, both the good and the bad?
I was fine being the daughter of Daddy. I didn't respond to being the daughter of Malcolm X as perceived by someone else. I didn't know how to do that. So being the daughter of Daddy was easy. You know, my father was my friend and quite paternal, but also a buddy. So I was not encumbered, or didn't permit myself to be encumbered by what the neighbors thought.
What do you remember most about him?
I remember much about him. I think one of the things that is consistent was his concern and his energy, vulnerability, gentleness, his humor, and yet firm.
What was a day like with him when you were a child?
Well, it varied on what the day was. All of it seemed normal to me, so someone else would think it's a separate or a poignant thing. For me, it was a rhythm that was very natural, where I hear that children can refer to parts of their childhood and feel resentment that their parent wasn't home. I don't recall feeling any resentment. When your parent presents your life to you as if it is normal, hence wonderful as it is, I didn't have any complaints I missed Daddy when he was gone. I missed Mommy when she was gone. When he was abroad, he was still present because he would write letters and treasure map kind of expeditions for us to hop one time, turn around, look underneath, turn over, and you'd stumble across something left there from him, from my mother, love letters. And to see that in her was wonderful.
When you were young, did you have the sense that he was famous, or that of the importance of what he was doing?
No, not the importance in the way that I know it and understand importance now. I didn't know what you thought about him. I hadn't given concern to what another person thought. I knew that people responded to him, and I thought that was normal. Also, what I didn't appreciate is when the attention disrupted the household, such as a Sunday afternoon when all the brothers from the temple came over. Suddenly children should be seen and not heard. That's different, because my household wasn't like that. I speak to people who grew up in that organization, children who grew up in that organization, and they were rigid households. There were rules.
And yours wasn't rigid?
No. There was always a heartbeat. We could laugh in my house. And I listened to people who assume that my father's house would have been much stricter because he was a loyal, dedicated servant of the Nation of Islam. No, We laughed a lot on the floor.
You make it sound as though there was a lot of sort of roughhousing and I get this image of you being tickled by him, in fact.
Forever. And him tickled by us.
Yeah.
And my parents romantic in their presentation and demonstration. You know, him falling asleep with his head on her lap while, you know, gentleness, camaraderie, friendship. I didn't know until I was 19 that there were rules and expectations of what a man is to do and what a woman is to do. I saw strength and vulnerability in them both.
When you began to realize that there was a different image of him that the world had, how did you deal with that?
They didn't know who I knew. Simple as that.
But did it hurt at all
No,
to hear people say things that were
No,
negative?
because I knew they didn't know him. I knew specifically that was an assessment made from limited information. You didn't know him like I knew him.
There are two, of course, tragic incidents in which it totally intruded and changed your life forever. Let's talk first of all about the bombing. Do you remember that?
Certainly.
What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember the chaos, the Molotov cocktail in our bedroom, the fire, my sister crying because fire got in her eye, she said, or a spark or something got in her eye. And we were scurried out the back door, very smoke-filled at this point. But yet there was a safety because both of my parents were right there, and the rhythm got us out. And so it's February 14th, winter in Queens, New York. We were in the driveway of the house as all the mayhem was being dealt with. And we were then taken to friends' homes where we stayed for a number of months.
What did your parents tell you afterwards?
Well, there were things going on beforehand. You know, you knew that friends who were once in your life were no longer friends. That was clear. The house surroundings, we were being stalked. People that you once recognized as comrades were now in cars around the corner, up the block, in front of the house, passing by, looking at you differently, not even giving a greeting. So it's not that a lot was said, yet a lot was conveyed.
And I heard my husband say, everything is all right, everything is all right. And someone about third or so that was seated in about the third row stood up, and I heard shots. I knew they had shot my husband.
Yes, I do believe there'll be further attempts on my life. I know them. They're foaming at the mouth. The rank and file Muslim means well. It's those at the hierarchy who are living off the fatted calf who don't mean well.
And then there was that other February day. Tell me about that.
Well, it was not regular that at this point that we attended fairs where my father was speaking. And now that we were living with a family that was already close with us, there's a different kind of jovialness that kept us busy as children. And that Sunday morning, my father called and invited us to come, which I thought was odd. Again, for a child, you respond to the rhythm. And that was a different beat. My mother was happy, and of course, we're all excitedly getting dressed to go see Daddy. Yet on the ride over, the rhythm kept a question for me, even young. And while people feel that perhaps children don't sense or understand, because of what I can recall vividly, as if it is yesterday, I don't put anything past children. I don't do or say anything around children. Things that I don't want them to remember. And we got there. We got there before he did. And there was some concern because my father was a stickler for time. And he came 40 to 45 minutes late. And I remember when he walked in, we said, there he is, there. And I heard my mother say, there's my husband. And she always said that. I mean, she says it the same way now. with such coup, you know.
Pride.
More, well, pride, yes, but it's more like that cooey kind. It's different.
Love.
Yeah, mushy love. I mean, like all the way love. That surrendering love. And she said, "There's my husband." And he went backstage to the green room, and things were tense. The person who was introducing him kept changing the format, changing the agenda, the order of things to discuss, because he was to come right out, especially being late. And he didn't. And when he finally did, wasn't 5 minutes, and our life changed.
Can you talk about what you remember from that day?
Oh, I saw the gentleman stand up. I saw the commotion that is often replayed, that is reenacted in the film that is coming out. That was done in Roots 2. The commotion there. It's one of those things that my father was not shot from a bush onto a rooftop or a balcony. My father didn't have some miscellaneous gunman in a library window. There were people present. There were other people wounded. The perpetrators were familiar. You couldn't get in that room unless somebody knew who you were. So when people attempt to dismiss the hands that pulled the trigger, you really cannot. It's just that they've gotten away with it only because of the silence of those present.
Now, what happened to you immediately afterwards? I mean, kind of play that out for me.
We were all scurried. We hit the floor, and, I mean, really a lot of mayhem. 7 or 8 people were shot. Chairs were falling over. Those were those wooden chairs that you set up in an old ballroom. And after everything had calmed down a bit, we were scurried to the back green room. And shortly thereafter, once he was taken out and across the street to the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, or on his way, I was standing alongside the wall, looking right into the eye of one of the men who I knew. I just recently experienced the death of my godfather. It was not easy. It was as if it was 27 years now. It was not easy. And the feeling of being robbed came back. But we move ahead.
Now, that's, of course, what your family did. Your mother, who has been applauded as a remarkable woman. How did you look at her when you were growing up?
Oh, my mother was my world. Not only just simply because I thought so, but I watched my father love her. She was beautiful to him. Hence, to me, no one was more beautiful than my mother. That you know, chinky-eyed smile, that beautiful brown face, the warmth that she exuded, the humor, that to me was what was beautiful. My mother's dedication and love and commitment to my father, I think, is what has sustained her over the last 27 years. I, as her daughter, wish for her an easier time. She gave up a lot, her youth. Having been in love and having been loved, I don't know if she's received flowers the same way, if she's gotten candy or the compliments the same way. And God forbid, if you know what love feels like, you wish you could have it forever. To our dearest mother, my father's brown sugar, his apple brown Betty, on behalf of your children, Mother, on behalf of our children, thank you. You have represented for us, your daughters, undying strength, tenacity. You stand for the epitome of
womanhood, Mom, motherhood, and though it may not show, a seed has been planted. And all that you gave to us on behalf of your undying love for our Father, who is absent, though present spiritually, you have won.
Now, we've talked a lot about your life, and you've seen the movie that is coming out in November. How much of all this that you've been telling me about the love and the wonderful feeling that your mother and father had for each other, that you had for your father, the kind of father he was, how much of that did you see in the movie?
The movie, titled Malcolm X, I believe, is an enjoyable movie. It's a good movie. It's an informative movie. It's a movie. The first time I saw it, of course, there were periods in the movie that did not duplicate the compassion that I knew, but I'm not telling the movie. I'm not doing the movie. And unless those who were forming the movie came to those who were able to fill in those blanks, they could not invent it.
How do you feel about the casting, the person who's playing your father?
Well, the casting overall is quite good. My grandmother's being portrayed by Lynette McKee, and exudes to me what I imagine my grandmother to be young, since I only knew her as an older woman. What's missing from my grandmother in the movie is her accent. My grandmother was not American, and if you know a non-American, you can't fake it. You can't fake. To me, that's an ingredient. For me, being a Caribbean American is a very necessary ingredient to.
Your grandmother was from
Grenada, and when she died 2 years ago, she was very much still very old world. But that's not anything that someone else will miss. That's only me looking for that. Lynette McKee did an excellent job in terms of presence and strength. I felt the woman in her while on screen. Look forward to meeting her as a result of her portraying it. My mother was portrayed by Angela Bassett, who is the mother in Boys in the Hood. Warm, strong, beautiful brown woman. In her silence, while in the film, it wasn't just the meek little Muslim wife, as people imagine, but her silence was one that I'm watching my husband's back, because that's what my mother was doing.
So that was an accurate portrayal in some sense.
In terms of what energy, in terms of the text, that's different. But in terms of the energies, in terms of the casting, the presence represented in the movie.
And how about Malcolm?
I think that Mr. Washington has done his best work in this film. It's a difficult range to do in terms of not only being 16 to 39, but the different evolutions or changes that my father went through in his own life that had to be depicted in the movie. And I have to applaud him for his research and attempt to capture.
I suspect it would be hard for anyone to portray your father and have you feel that's Daddy.
I didn't go looking for Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go looking for Mommy. I didn't go looking for Grandma. They jumped out on the screen as women that I respect. Then I named it Louise. Then I named it Betty. In terms of someone playing Malcolm, I could never expect someone to become my daddy, but become a likable person, become a person that when I watch, I want to be like. You could name it anything you want. One thing that is missing for me from the movie is the laughter. Heartbeat from the beginning. That even while tormented by the memories of what happened to his family, his own family, and living in the streets, there was a likable brother with the rhythms of the street, with the wit, that is not different than the wit he was known for when he was the adult man that we got to know. But I don't know if anybody else will miss that. So I'm not looking for anyone to duplicate what I know, just to start the interest in people's search or quest to study and be fair about the assessments of a man. I just hope that with the movie and the ease now to do other things, whether they're documentaries or interviews or more stories, that it allows people to get to see the flower, the bouquet of Malcolm Shabazz's life.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was delightful to chat with you today. And thank you for being with us today. And that is it for this edition of Bay Sunday. We'll be back again next Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Hope you'll be here too. Have a good week. Goodbye.
I've never at any time made any statement that anybody could even interpret to indicate that I believe in initiating acts of aggression or violence indiscriminately against people.
No.
I don't have to raise a call to action. And this is what I'm trying to make white people see. They have lost their ability to be objective where the race problem is concerned, primarily because they know that no real meaningful results have come from the Negro struggle. And in defense of this, they always call it or label it violence.
You really believe that any meaningful result is going to come from violence?
It's not a case of violence. I think that, see, if you could get away from looking at it as violence, then you would be objective and see that actually all it is a tendency to react to what they are confronting. White people don't realize how frustrated Negroes have become.
You have changed your attitude about the white man in the United States to some extent.
Well, I've broadened my scope. Travel broadens your scope. It gives you a wider understanding. And I have, in my many lectures on college campuses, seen many whites, even as a black Muslim.
Are you not, perhaps, afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already.